Hello and welcome to interest.co.nz. I'm Gareth Vaughan with another of our double shot interviews, and I'm joined by John Bolton from Squirrel Mortgages. John, welcome in. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, welcome.
John's here to talk about the Auckland property market, the Auckland housing market. John, we've obviously seen, a slowdown in the Auckland housing market. Certainly sales volumes are down. The median prices are holding up in the official figures that we get thus far, usually, although they have been bouncing around a little bit.
Yeah.
What are you seeing out there at the moment?
Look, I think the official statistics generally sort of flow about 2 or 3 months behind what's actually occurring in the market. So often what you're seeing in the media is actually already played out, like 2 or 3 months ago. October, November was really slow. We had a significant drop-off in our business over that time period. The vast majority of that was in the Chinese market. So we saw volumes in the Chinese market literally drop off a cliff. If I look at the business today, that's still where the slowdown's occurring. The rest of the business, we actually have a Chinese team and an Indian team, and then we have a sort of a broad-brushed Auckland-based team. All the other teams in our business are running pretty much business as usual, especially now that we're running into Christmas. We're going to have a record month in December. We're going to break 100 million of settlements for the first time, which is a fantastic result for us. All of those teams are hitting records. The one team that's really struggling in this market is our Chinese team.
And is that primarily due to the new IRD measures that came in October? Is that the key thing for them, having to have an IRD number and a New Zealand bank account?
Yeah, look at it.
And just to be clear, are we talking about New Zealand resident Chinese or money coming in from offshore, people overseas?
Yeah, so we've had this discussion before. Yeah. This has always been about New Zealand resident Chinese, but foreign capital. Okay. So the reality is that the urban myth of someone coming in on a plane and buying up the country, it happens. We've certainly had a few clients that have done just that. But that's not where it is. It's essentially New Zealand resident Chinese, probably recent immigrants within the last sort of 8 to 10 years, having access to large amounts of foreign capital. So a lot of money flowing in from China. And essentially that's the big thing that changed in October. And it wasn't so much the rules here, it was actually the sort of the clamping down in China itself. So there were two big things that happened over there. There was obviously that massive share market correction that they had. And I think that was actually felt quite significantly. And then the second was the Chinese government restricting the outflow of money pretty much after the share market crash. And that really tightened things up, and that was really noticeable. On top of that, we obviously had a number of things happening here in terms of the 70% LVR restrictions and the IRD numbers and everything else. With so much change over such a short period of time, whether or not people had access to capital, I think a lot more people have stepped back on the fence just to sort of see what happens with the market over the next sort of 3 or 4 months. We had exactly the same thing happen when the first home buyer over 80% changes went through. We went through a period of 3 or 4 months where the market literally slowed down while it sort of took its breath and figured out what it meant. And I think we're going through that same process now. My view of it is that come February, once we get through Chinese New Year, I think you'll see the Chinese starting to come back into the market a lot stronger. And then if you look at it from a global perspective, there's a lot happening in China at the moment, particularly with them becoming a reserve currency. And starting to deregulate and probably free up their foreign exchange again. And as that happens and that capital starts to free up, and as this economy sort of starts to firm up and things like business confidence is really sort of starting to pick up again, I think you're going to see the Chinese coming back into this market in a pretty strong way, sort of after February.
So just in terms of, just to finish off the last few months, obviously we've seen sales volumes down. What's your impression of what prices have done?
Look, I think personally, without looking at statistics, my feel from what I see in the market is that house prices have come off about 10% from their peak, which was sort of around May, June. But that doesn't necessarily translate into the results. What I'm looking at is back in sort of May, June, our buyers were pretty much having to pay too much, that little bit extra to secure a property. Whereas now with the auction rates decline and everything else, the same pressure's not there on the house prices, and there's an ability to negotiate or an expectation that they can get the price down a bit. The other side of it, in certain areas it's really obvious, particularly the areas around Auckland where there has been a high proportion of Chinese buyers, and they're just not in the market, and that's definitely softened the prices there. But you won't necessarily see that come through that strongly, in that I think most people have a view that the market will come back, and most people aren't in a position where they need to sell. So hence you're sort of seeing auction clearance rates dropping, the number of house sales falling, because people are literally just withdrawing from the market until the house prices sort of come back and that strength is there again. So I kind of expect that to sort of continue. At some point early next year, I think you'll get a bit of a kicker coming through. And then as everyone jumps back into the market, you'll get a bit of a surge going, because there's certainly a lot of people sitting on the fence at the moment. They want to buy, but they're just sitting on the fence, and as soon as they'll rush back in, with the lack of supply in the market, you'll see a bit of a kicker.
Now, you mentioned the Reserve Bank LVR rules for Auckland property investors, so they need a 30% deposit now. We've seen, obviously, and heard anecdotally about Auckland investors going to other parts of the country, but is this creating some opportunity for first home buyers in Auckland?
Yeah, it is. I actually think,
obviously ones who've got at least 20% deposit.
Yeah, and can afford to buy a $600,000 or $700,000 house. Our definition of first home buyers moved a lot over the years. I think there's a real opportunity for anyone in the market at the moment that's looking at owner-occupied property to get in. I think our first home buyer market's actually going quite well at the moment because of the auction rates falling. The opportunity for them to get into the market at the moment is a hell of a lot better than it has been. I mean, last year it was near impossible for people to get into the market, whereas this year it does feel more sensible, albeit Auckland house prices are really high, but they're certainly if the opportunity to buy is there right now through to probably February, March. I often get asked, because I'm one of those ones that certainly thinks that prices can't keep going the way that they are, whether or not now's a good time to buy. Potentially, given that the world is fairly unstable at the moment, and there could be some sort of market correction over the next couple of years. I'm pretty reluctant in the property investment space in the Auckland market, because why would you overextend yourself into this market? But as far as owner-occupied is concerned, and particularly when you sort of look at the central city, which has got so much limited land supply and everything else, now does feel like a pretty good time to be able to buy into that market if you're looking to sort of buy an owner-occupied property.
Well, look, thanks a lot for that, John. It's a great little update there on what's going on in the Auckland property market. That's John Bolton from Squirrel Mortgages, and I'm Gareth Vaughan at interest.co.nz.